Well, this is Kirt Cathey with 5 hacking tips. Today, I wanted to cover the subject of next generation security technology. Basically, when somebody says next generation firewall, where they say, they have a product that they're selling and they're calling it next generation something. Um, and it's also thrown around like in SOC management. We manage our SOC with next generation technology, or we're next generation SOC. Many times people will say. I just want to boil down to what that means. At least to me, I think it might mean different things to different people. But I mean, there are even if it does mean different things to different people, it boils down to a couple of things that are common, I guess, among most people that I deal with that address this. So here, let me share my other screen here, and I basically made out a slide here. So as I usually do, the first, I think the first part about when I hear next generation, if somebody says that they have a next generation firewall, I'm just going to basically talk around a firewall and an IPS here, because a lot of this is what it is. There's other things I've included, but the first one is, if they say we're running next generation, then the first thing I think is that they have a good real-time intelligence feed with up-to-date indicators of compromise, automatically updated into their detection systems. And we'll go into a little more about that. But that's like the first thing. So on the endpoint, and then also across the network, they have up-to-date IOCs that preferably closed intelligence, good closed intelligence, not just the generic ones that you get, free, they're open. Although those help a lot, they are a bit late on 0 days and also campaigns and stuff like that that do occur. So there's different levels of threat intelligence and threat intelligent capability, but without getting too deep into that. So that's one thing. And then the next thing is basically, something beyond layer 3 and layer 4, where you're looking at a port and you're looking at a protocol, something beyond that. For example, application traffic registration or device traffic registration. Your Fortinets and many others, not many others, but a couple in the market offer that. Palo Alto does also. There's like app ID and then device ID. These, although quite often they don't get completely implemented, they'll get implemented in the most secure of subnets sometimes, but they won't really get commonly implemented just because of the tedium and the additional cost. And then also they're pretty much, because of the complexity, they're afraid to break something basically in production environments. So we don't see this implemented that often, but in very good environments, this is implemented because this allows you to cover the 5 to 7 layer of the stack from a network perspective, anyways, network traffic perspective. And then that takes us to the next subject, which is traffic transparency. So to be able to see the packets and see the traffic that's going through, and also to be able to do deep packet inspection by decrypting packets that are going across the network. Initially, about 10 years ago, when this technology was first implemented, it was very controversial because a lot of people in charge of certain countries of companies had to give up their master SSL for their traffic encryption and that kind of thing. But we're beyond that now. We're at a point now, since WannaCry was the big one that kind of turned everybody toward traffic transparency really quick, or it sped up the process, put it that way, for the people that were holding out. And then the next one is behavioral analytics. So there's a lot of there's a lot of debate around this. I am one for it when done correctly, and I've had experiences with a couple of different systems out there that do this, and they all do it actually quite good. It's just it enhances correlation among data sources, and it consumes that and puts it into some kind of a learning system so that it understands what's in context for a particular node or a particular user. And then the next one is not really like next generation. I guess this is my additional thing, but like when you look at a next generation SOC, vigilance is at its best. And I think one of the other ways, and one of the most overlooked areas of monitoring systems and SOC architecture in general, as it's applied. When it's designed, it's usually included, but when it's applied, it many times isn't. And that's basically back channels. Not just to be looking at everything port 80 and 8080 or whatever it is that you're allowing to go out, but also look at DNS, because you're not stopping DNS. You can't, you might be able to stop it for some systems but for the most part, DNS port 53 is wide open. And, even if you're stopping a malicious external connection over port 80, port 53 is wide open. It is a lot slower when you set it up. I actually have a blog write-up about this. Ping me. Subscribe and get to know me. But yeah, do ping me if you want a link to that. And the other one is, there's ICMP back channel. Although I've never really had to use it personally. It's out there and I know that it can be done. But we're not looking at that a lot of times. But, to have other systems in there that look at what the back channels are doing. And then the other thing I want to mention for DNS, it's actually quite easy. Just sinkhole it. If you have to, get a Raspberry Pi as a DNS sinkhole or whatever. It works quite effective. But in an enterprise environment, most firewalls have, next-gen firewalls anyways, have that option. And then here's another thing. This is my thing again, and it's not necessarily about technology, but it is about implementing the technology. And that's, a SOC or a security team and everything around that next generation technology that you've implemented within, your security architecture is to have a continuous improvement model where you're actually tuning alerts and you're working, for example, with the incident response team, with the SOC's working with the incident response team to say, well, is that always going to be that level of an alert? Or, since we know what the root cause is and it's not actually an incident, should we tune that alert so that, it doesn't get across, for example, to the incident response team? So to either change the level or absorb some of the alerts and then give an end of day digest or whatever that is. There's many options. And then here's another one that I mentioned quite often and people don't understand, but for, SIEM technology that's implemented, and for people that don't understand what SIEM is, it's basically security and event manager. It basically takes logs and you can do all kinds of things with it and create custom alerts and create dashboards from various log sources to do analysis. SIEMs, a lot of people set up their SIEM because they know they got to have their SIEM because they might need to analyze something. So they get their critical systems and they get their high-risk systems or whatever, however they decide to prioritize it. But they get those systems and they get those logs going and they don't do anything with it. And it goes into the SIEM and they'll get alert every now and then if they happen to set up, when they first set up the SIEM. But you have to re-look at that. You have to reevaluate that at least, once a year, depending on the size of the company, but at least to give it a little attention to say, okay, do we have any new systems that have been onboarded, or when a system is onboarded, do we need to add that log to the SIEM? Do we need to add an extra alert to that? And basically to have a SIEM strategy session, periodically to relook at how you're gathering logs in your environment and how you're leveraging that. It's a very cost-saving thing, better than just paying for a bunch of storage and storing logs continuously. And it also goes back in with alert tuning. Look back into your SIEM and look at your alerts and see if you can enhance them. There's another side to SIEM I just want to add, though, not to rant about it, but a lot of companies implement this technology. They pay millions of dollars for it, but they don't put somebody next to it to manage it. You need somebody on the dashboard pulling the information together, because you can actually get a pretty robust chunk of information about your security posture from proper SIEM management. And then the last one is a rant. So thank you for spending this much time to hear me out. But this one, zero trust is not next generation technology. I mean, and next generation doesn't imply zero trust or anything like that. What zero trust is basically a model, and it's been defined. It started out as basically something in a person's mind that worked at Oracle that eventually moved over to another company that left that company and left that slogan there, and that company has been pushing it, and they sell a so-called VPN solution, zero trust VPN solution. There is no single solution out there that gives you zero trust, and there's no single solution that is a zero trust solution. Zero trust is the best I've seen it defined so far is the NIST documentation, where there's basically a policy terrace, and that policy is looking at access controls, basically general policies about access and sharing of information. And it's quite complex. Look up NIST and zero trust, and you'll see the model. But to me, that's what zero trust is. And if you can implement an architecture that abides by that, then we're talking zero trust. Right now, everybody's trying to sell something. And the biggest one from some of the bigger guys is they're trying to sell consulting services around zero trust to try and get you there. But if somebody sells themselves as a zero trust solution, chances are they're not actually fully implementing zero trust, because it's not a single solution. It's an architecture. It's a way to create environments. It's not a single solution either. So that's my rant, and that's my subject today. If you have any questions, responses, rant backs, feel free to get back in touch with me. Communicate with me either on the comments or directly over social media. You all know where I'm at. And thank you for the time today. Talk to you later.